The Truth Podcast live from Harmonics Media Center. Guys, I'm excited today. Here we are on this great Tuesday, about to talk about life and just lay out some good stuff. I'm here with you're here with the Jen, you're here with the Winston, we got Carson, we got John, and we got our special guest today. His name is Maros Serna. Maros is a pretty extravagant young man. He's done some cool shit. What's up, Maros?
Nothing much. How's it going?
Hey, how's life treating you, brother? It's been a long time. How long has it been?
Oof, man. I think the first time we were connected was almost 5-6 years ago, right?
That's been a while, hasn't it been?
Yeah, ever since then. I was doing art back then. I was carving and painting, and I was just finishing college, and then decided to go to San Francisco. And so that's kind of the last time we met. It was pretty crazy.
So tell us, so Marcos, I was talking to Brian, and you came up and we're just talking. And one thing that was always cool is I remember that first time you told me you were going to do a triathlon, and you really didn't train for that, did you?
No, man. And so taking you like way back, when I was 5 is when I started swimming, and did that. Ended up doing running in high school and then in college as well. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, hey, bro, I think it would be great to do a triathlon. And so just ended up doing it, and fell in love with the sport. And before you know it, I was a triathlete for Team USA, kicking butt there, and traveling in different parts of the US. And I just pretty crazy to think about that, and kind of how that started.
So walk us through that time, that first time you did that. What was going through your mind? Like, you never done this before, and so I'm just give it a shot. Because your first triathlon, you placed first, right? Am I right?
No, you're absolutely right. Like, being from New Mexico, I was winning triathlons by 7 to 8 minutes. And really not too much training. I did have a few mentors, right? And so that's kind of like the first thing that I decided to do when starting a triathlon, was find the people that have actually done it, right? And so that's kind of what allotted me the opportunity to just learn so rapidly. But the first experience, it's humbling. I mean, not too many people understand like what it takes to do a triathlon. And it's it's a swim first, and then a bike, and then a run. And so as you're going through the process, it's pretty crazy. But like, once you get on the run, your whole body is just completely tired. And like, it's a feeling that a lot of people don't understand unless you do it. But it just takes a lot of will to even get yourself to the finish line at the run. So yeah.
What part do you think of the triathlon was the hardest for you?
Hardest part, mental, honestly.
Yeah.
You have to really convince yourself that you can do it. I mean, that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, I coach a lot of people, and they're like, I want to run fast or bike or swim. And it's like, you need to train your mental first, because if you don't have the right mindset going in to the triathlon, you're not going to finish it. Right. Because I would say, the swim is probably the easiest because it's the first event. But once you get into the bike, and then you've realized you have a whole nother run to do, people mentally break down. And so if you can train your mindset first, I mean, that's what's most important in a triathlon.
I think that's pretty much anything in life, right?
It's a good point. Yeah.
Business, kickboxing or business, or I mean, just it's about that mental grit. How far can I go? I've talked about this in my previous podcasts, is that your mind will tell you no, but you're only about 20% of the capacity of your body.
Interesting.
And most people will only push themselves to about 5%.
5%.
So when you think about that 5% of you is saying, I can't do this, but you still have 95% of the tank.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you alluded to the fact, though, like in life in general, though, right? It's a mindset, right? Not only in business, but like being a better family person too. Like,
right.
Convincing yourself too that you can do it as well is like one of the hardest parts, in my opinion.
What do you say, Marcos, on the first time that we met and stuff? What was a takeaway when we first met? What do you think my street cred was?
Your street cred?
Yeah.
Well, I was introduced to you by my mentor, Brian Colon.
Yes.
And we're at I think I was a sophomore in college at the time. and we went to one of his parties, and he introduced me to you. And like right off the bat, it was just, like an aura, right?
Yeah, yeah,
About
yeah.
you, right? A lot of people just knew who you were. And, me being so naive, didn't know anything, right? But just how you handled yourself was like super important as like a young man trying to be successful.
Right.
Just like seeing how you handled yourself was like really inspired me. And it's funny, like I don't tell this a lot to people in general, but like when we first met, it was like almost a wow, I want to be like Jack, right? And ever since then, like we've had really good, experience just like learning, but also like understanding like that's where I want to be one day, right? So
I think one of the things that I remember talking is that I remember I was talking to you and your dad, and it was
yeah,
remember that
I
situation?
do.
And I remember your dad's thinking of, he was really impressed on how I commanded the room, but I was the youngest, pretty much the youngest guy in that room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see what you know what I mean? And I remember that's what you really identified with. And it's like, again, about how you carrying yourself. And it's not about you're building this false confidence. It's like what you've done right now in a triathlon. There's nothing to talk about. If
yeah,
we're sitting here with all of us here and we say, who's the baddest triathlete here? It's you. There's nothing to talk about because you've proven those grounds. And I think that's what I've done in business, right? That's what I've done when I used to do when I was in martial arts, is because your actions will always speak louder than your words.
Mm.
And that's what really sets things apart versus the guy who's making a lot of noise and he doesn't get nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that's what I've told Carson, I've told Nikki, I've told John, your actions are what speak the loudest, right? When you lay out those points on the board, it doesn't matter what your opinion of LeBron James is.
Yeah.
It just, how many points did he put up, and the guy's broken history, right? And that's or Tom Brady. How many times they tell Tom Brady he's washed up, and here we are with another Super Bowl under his ring.
Execution,
right? Execution. So tell me, what's the latest thing you've done in athletics now?
Latest thing was actually yesterday. Duke City Marathon. Honestly, wasn't even training for it. Just staying in really good shape. And ended up getting second at the Duke City, first marathon ever, sub 3 hours, qualified for Boston Marathon. So yeah, I was just
what was going through your head yesterday when you were doing that run?
I'm a huge believer in smiling through the pain. And so a lot of pain was happening, but also just like enjoying the experience. I'm kind of at the point in my life where it's, I want to build what's called a library of experiences, have a lot of stories from different fields of life, right? And one of those was to do a marathon. And so not knowing what pain I was going to go through at mile 20, mile 23, that for me was an experience. And so it's going to sound bad, but I kind of I had fun with it.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Marcus, one thing I've always that I see a lot of yourself and myself at your age is, one thing I liked is your confidence. You have a very strong confidence from the first day I met you. Where does that come from?
Confidence comes for
you.
Yeah.
For you.
No, I actually had to rebuild myself up from getting torn down. And so I'm a huge believer in books, right? And this is it's kind of weird, but like during triathlon, so I was representing Team USA. I ended up getting injured. And I ended up getting a lot of bad stomach problems. Anyways, the point is I had to stop doing triathlon. And this is probably the first time I've told you or Brian, but like pretty much hit rock bottom, like not knowing what to do in my life.
Right.
And at that point, it was kind of, what is it that I want to do? Like I was in a dark state, right? And so I just decided to start reading books and like understanding other people's journey and what they did to overcome it. And so one of the best books that I had was called Man's Search for Meaning, and is by a gentleman by the name of Viktor Frankl. And he talked about being in the Holocaust and seeing that someone that had a belief, what they call like something to live for, right, are the ones that actually lived. The ones that completely lost all hope, they ended up dying, right? Because they had nothing to look forward to. And so that really resonated with me. And I built myself up. And mastery of self is so important to me. And once I found out, like, what do I live for, right? What gets me excited, which is helping others be successful, being successful in business, being successful and trying new things. Like, that really resonated with me. And so you ask, like, where does my confidence come from? It comes from me just knowing who I am, right? And that inevitably, gives me the freedom to not think of what what other people care about what I do or say, and it's good to not have that feeling, because a lot of people do, right?
So would you say you had that inherently at a very young age? Or walk us through that.
No. Yeah, I can walk you through it.
Yeah, walk us through that beginning time. So we can know, like, okay, what got you that? Because I'm going to lead into something with myself, right? And I think I've shared this with you, but take us down where you weren't confident. What was that spark to say, I don't care about these people's opinions?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so I'm introverted. As it doesn't sound like I am. So there's like introvert, extrovert, and then in the middle there's ambivert. And so I'm more of an ambivert, and I can turn on extrovert. But when I was young, I was super introverted. I was actually bullied in high school, and yeah, I mean, I just had no confidence in myself in high school. So I would say, like, my high school years are probably the worst years of my life. But going into college, and it's kind of sound kind of corny, but like, for me, it was putting in preparation in running that gave me my confidence, because I knew if I prepared and I did everything I could to be successful, I'd run Division 1. And that's exactly what I did. And I hit my goal. And so that gave me a lot of confidence within myself. And that's kind of what allotted me the opportunity just to, I guess, kind of seize the moment,
So you were a pretty first runner in high school?
Oh yeah. So I started running my freshman year of well, pretty much in 7th grade. I was a swimmer my whole life, from like 5 to 10 years of age. And I just started running right before high school.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, also, I didn't have genetics working for me at the time. I was like a 4'8", like 100 pounds going into high school, braces, big face, like, it was horrible, and so, but anyways, that's not the idea, but just,
But it
putting
is,
out
but it
there.
is. What people don't realize is self-image is something so strong that can make you or break you. So it is. Because
Good
think
point.
about that, how ingrained it is in your mind. You just said, look, big face, braces, I'm going into high school.
Yeah.
But you have an ability. You have a God-given gift.
Hmm.
And yet all this, what the world says, you're short, you're this, but you actually had a God-given ability that you're like, I need to just really exploit this. Think about that. And think about what you focused on and where you are now. Because you could have just given up and said, look, everything's against me. I'm 4'5", I'm 100 pounds. I got this. The hell with it. I'm not going to do anything. Because what's the average size of a good runner?
Oh man, I'm still short for a good runner. Like, I'm 5'7", 136 right now, but typically, like, a good runner is probably like 5'11", 145.
Okay. So you're talking is what I always talk about. This is what the podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
You're beating the odds.
Yeah, good point.
You're beating the odds. And what you're telling the listeners out here, it doesn't matter what's stacked up against you. It's only what matters what you believe in yourself is what's going to propel you forward. Right. I used to get picked on a lot, Marcos, believe it or not. I got picked on tremendously as a little boy. Right. I got a story out there that I put out there. It's called my enlightenment letter. But when I realized in myself is that I was in the reverse of you, is that I had the genetics and the physical ability, but I didn't have the belief. Then someone had to sit with me and say, how are you getting picked on when you're the bigger kid? That doesn't make any sense. So I had the Lambert the Lion syndrome. But once I awoke the lion, I'm going to tell you this right now, no one's had picked on me since, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to tell you? But that's the perspective I think that we got to see. It doesn't matter what it is. You could be the guy with the genetics and not have the confidence. You could be the guy with not the genetics and not having the confidence or a purpose. But purpose and confidence, when you mix those two together, it's unstoppable. It's just unstoppable, right? So continue. So you get on the team, and so walk us through that. So you're walking in with the braces, and so what it was, you said, I want to run.
It's a good story. I haven't told this to a lot of people, so I'm glad I'm able to tell it now. But yeah, I mean, freshman year was a tough year for me. Not only like getting picked on, but it was total 360, like taking a lot of like honors courses, all this stuff. It was just a lot in general. And so yeah, I mean, you know, my dad is like probably my closest role model. And he always says like, someone's always working harder than you. Right. And so that always is in my mind when like I'm trying to achieve something, right? Whether it be athletics, business, whatever, like as good as you think you are, there's somebody out there in the world that's always, you know, training harder than you and so that always stuck with me. And he always said like, you know, you need to put in the work to be successful. And so for me, confidence comes through preparation. And so like, you know, and also my goal was to like hit a sub 5-minute mile. That was like the goal as a freshman, and I achieved that, but I had to put in the work. And so as I progressed from freshman, finally started like hitting puberty, right? Starting to get those muscles that developed, you know, you go into your junior and senior year and you just see this huge improvement, right? And you go from like running sub 5-minute mile, like trying to break that barrier, and you're hitting like 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Like you're top, you know, runner in the state, you know, you're going to, you know, Arizona and California and competing against the best in the nation. Right. And so it's crazy to think that like I came in as like this 4'11" freshman. And then my junior, senior year, I was what, 5'6", 5'7", 130, like, you know,
Dominating.
Yeah, exactly. Had an afro, was dominating.
So what was your fastest mile?
Fastest mile was, so in college when I ran it, it was 4:11, and
holy shit, that's just flying.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, but there's a lot of strategy to the mile, and so pretty good. But there's a lot of people sub 4, so I always think I could have done better. But I did better in triathlon.
Ladies and gentlemen out there, I thought I was killing it with my 505 mile, dude. When you get that 4, you know, hey, we're not even in the game anymore. You know what I mean, John? We're not even in the game, baby. You know,
it's like Captain America.
Hey, it's fuck. That's just insane. So then walk us in. So then UNM picked you up, obviously, or other schools looking at you, or what? How did that?
Yeah, I had a few other schools like Baylor, U of A. Those were 2 of them, but I wanted to run for local state university. All my family's here, and so grandma, and aunties, uncles, they still support me. I think they were more happy that I did good in the marathon yesterday than I was myself. So just on Facebook, liking everything. But yeah, stayed at UNM, and yeah, I'll be honest, like wasn't for me. Like in college, you're going from like 30 to 40 mile weeks that you have, you know, to 100+ miles. And so injury after injury after injury, and it was just tough. And so like after, you know, going into UNM, like decided freshman year, like, nope, this is not for me. And that's how I actually ended up finding triathlon. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise.
Right.
So, but it's, you know, college running or college athletics is not for everybody. Like people need to understand that. Cause like in high school, if you're an athlete, like you have this goal to like do well in college, but it's a different level. Like, you know, it's a business. Right. And so if you're not producing, the coaches, they're not your best friends anymore.
No,
right.
You're a horse. It's exactly your horse.
Yeah.
How many races can you win? This is why I promised my mom that I'd get an engineering degree and not continue just being down the fight planner, right? Because you're just a horse and it's very short-lived. And when you strengthen your mind, that can go forever.
Yeah.
Your body's going to break down no matter what. I mean, we're laughing here. We're talking. I was listening to these guys and about getting back in the weight room, and you know, you miss 6 months, and all of a sudden you're, you know, struggling. You know, in the peak of my careers in bodybuilding, I used to bench 455 pounds, 6 to 7 reps, like cheesecake.
A cheesecake.
No, unstoppable.
Yeah.
Now I try to do that and I'm going to crush myself, right? But the thing is about it is it was that determination, because I did start exactly the way you said, right? I didn't have money to buy weights, so I filled some 10-gallon buckets, 5-gallon buckets with cement, and I put the stick together. And that determination, I thought, you know what, I'll lift trash cans, or I'm gonna leave these pieces of wood. But when you put something in your mind and you're like, I'm gonna achieve it, I actually believe when you're against the odds are for you. My mom used to tell me as a young man, she would say, you know, when you come down to the city, you have the advantage. And I'd be like, no, Mom, these guys have jobs. They got this, they got this. Like, no, son, you're a Viking. And a Viking is coming off the mountain. You have the advantage because you come from the cold. You come from the high altitude.
Yeah.
You can last longer without eating. And so when I came with that mindset, I was like, I'm literally going to come in. So that I've taken that very Viking mentality that I've done it in business and I've done in my life, because I think I have the advantage.
Interesting.
Because I can make a lot with a little. And when I hear that, it's what I hear that in you. So you got the running, you said, you know, freshman year, I'm gonna do this. And then how did you step into the triathlon? How did that come about?
Yeah. And so you saying the Viking, I don't have the, like, I would have a Viking mindset, but you and I have very similar like paths. And I want to walk you through that because,
okay.
But anyway, so yeah, so college running, okay, done, and switching to triathlon, right? Everyone's like, what, you done triathlon? Like, I didn't know how to, like, I knew how to ride a bike, but not a road bike. Like, no one knows the difference, but like riding a bike is okay, kind of could be easy. Riding a road bike, you're like, you have clip-ins in your pedals and you can't get out unless you like, you know, turn your heel and get out of it. So I would tell you, I fell like 20, 30 times, you know, that just like getting on the bike and trying to get off. Like, it was just a learning experience for me. But yeah, starting to learn as, you know, getting mentors, getting the people that have been there and done that, and then getting them to try to coach me was like something that I was really excited about. But I just had this goal and mindset to like prove people wrong, because everyone's like, in my mind, it was like, oh, I was a failed college athlete. And I just didn't want to have that like stigma about me. And so just started putting in the work, right? Start training. And then the first race, you end up winning by 7 minutes and everyone's like, who's this kid? Right. But what's interesting, and this is what I wanted to highlight, is in New Mexico, like I'd win by 7, 8 minutes, but everyone was like, oh, you can't do that against, you know, people from Colorado and Denver, you know, Texas.
Yeah, same story.
Yeah.
I call it the haterade.
Oh yeah.
You
but
know what I mean?
I love that, you know, like haters gonna hate, but I like, it's fuel for the fire. Right. And so, yeah, I ended up going to, not a lot of people know this, but there was it's what they call as a talent ID series. That's just the name for it. But basically their goal, USA Triathlon was trying this new program to see if they can spot like good talent. And I found it online one day, and it was a series of like 8 races in the Rocky Mountain region. So they actually didn't come to New Mexico, but it was like Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming. And I ended up winning all 8 races in that like series. And before you know it, the coaches from Team USA were like, hey, you need to enter this race. It's a professional race. If you do well, you'll be on like Team USA, things like that. And so ended up like just training, like having this maniacal focus to just be successful. And it's crazy, but like, you know, Valley Pool, like in New Mexico, it's like, like it's open till 9 p.m. No one knows this, but I would get in at 7. Everyone would clear at 8. And it just me, just picture this, me swimming laps with 2 lifeguards looking at me. That's it. But in my mind, I was like racing other people.
Right.
Like I was like, all right, I need to hit this time. And like, for me, it was like a competition, because I'm just envisioning what it was going to be like at the professional race. And yeah, I don't know what was going through my mindset, but just like this crazy determination to not only prove people wrong, but to be successful myself. And so when I went to that race, I ended up becoming the 5th fastest triathlete in the world. Well, not in the world, in the US. It was an international race, but in the US, and yeah, I ended up becoming a pro triathlete just from that race. And it was just like the culmination of just hard work, dedication. And I don't know, like I just have a chip on my shoulder being like from New Mexico, and just, you see it all the time. Like people put New Mexico down. I don't know why. It's just like,
You know why? Because they're fools. Because I tell people have told me that my whole life. Oh, you're gonna be strong, and because you're in the north. Wait till you get to Albuquerque. Wait till you get to this.
Oh, interesting.
My experience is the competition has gotten easier and easier for me. So it's that mindset. The great Sun Tzu, one of the greatest things you could have is
Art of war.
And art of war is when your enemy basically dismisses you. That is the greatest value you possibly could have. And so that it really plays in our advantage because you don't even see us coming.
That's a good point.
I prefer you not to see me coming because when I eat your lunch, it's going to be fast, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So then, you're going through this whole thing. What happens then?
Oh, after the triathlon, yeah, it was it was a good experience. I ended up going to Colorado Springs to train at the U.S. Olympic Training Center, and they basically put me on like it was a the top 10 triathletes in the US to make it to Tokyo Olympics. And so we trained out there, and it was a great experience. I got pictures on my Facebook and everything.
Yeah.
And you're just training with the elite of the elite. And so now it's like you made it. Like people respect you for who you are. It's not like, oh, you're New Mexico. It's like, no, I'm here, man. Like, and you're competing against the best of the best, but it brings the best out of you. And that's what I desired, and that's what I wanted. And so yeah, you do a few competitions, but then it's just, man, I've had the worst luck of just injuries. And so just getting injuries, pulling my quad again. And it was just kind of like, it was a fun experience, but ultimately it wasn't something I wanted to do in life because I did really well in college, graduated with the 4.33 GPA, right? Pretty much perfect at UNM, finance and entrepreneurship. And I was like, you know what? I need to get into business, right? And so yeah, just a little bit of a 360, but it was like, look, I accomplished what I needed to do. It was fun, and now is what's next.
It was that chapter. I think what you're saying is, and this is what I tell a lot of people, and we sound the same in this piece, okay? A lot of people are only motivated by positive reinforcement. This has been studied by psychologists. Very few are actually fueled by negative reinforcement.
Negative.
We're part of the few weirdos in the world, right? I'm gonna tell this. And so negative reinforcement is what's fueled me my entire life.
Interesting.
Negative. And so what it does to me, it fuels me so deep in my soul, and it's like, watch me beat you.
Yeah.
And it's weird as shit, right? Because me and Nikki, we talk, and we'll be playing basketball or doing anything. But the moment you talk smack to me, for some reason, like, I just become a better ball player. I become a better something. You know what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
And so negative reinforcement is really not good, but that's what fueled you. So what happened is your body and your mind are so tied together that being a triathlete wasn't really your passion. It was a milestone. And it was the milestone to build you to something else. Like what kickboxing was for me. Right?
Interesting.
Kickboxing for me was easy. It came natural to me. I mean, Nikki's seen me in the gym. She's the speed of my fist, right?
Yeah.
But what it is, it's not really my passion.
But
it fueled me to the next level. This is what I want to get to. So then walk us through, okay, so you know what? You're killing it at this. You're saying, you know what? Life's throwing me some sidewinders. I'm down on my face right now. I'm going to get up, dust my knees like my grandfather said. So then what'd you do? Then what was the next thing?
Yeah. The next step after triathlon was that part where I hit like rock bottom, right? I knew I wanted to get into business, but I didn't know what exactly, like, what I wanted to do, right? Do I want to start my own company? Do I want to work for a company? Like, I didn't know. And so as luck would have it, actually, this is wild, but I was actually starting to go into law school. And I ended up getting an email from this company called SV Academy, which is basically a sales boot camp. So you know how they do coding boot camps?
Right.
So it was a sales boot camp. It was like the first of its kind, and SV stands for Silicon Valley Academy. And I got it through one of my honor societies, and they said, hey, it's a 12-week boot camp. Come in here, learn how to be a good, what they call as a sales development rep. You're going to cold call, cold email. You're going to be really good at like getting chief marketing officers of Nike and AT&T on the phone and getting them to a meeting. That's your goal. And so did that program, went and then took a risk, went to San Francisco, like didn't even have like, no one from my family has gone outside of New Mexico. And so for me to go to San Francisco was like a pretty big risk, but I was motivated to be successful. And yeah, I'm out there in San Francisco, getting in 6 a.m., leaving 6 p.m., like putting in the work. But I was #1 enterprise sales development rep, got promoted to what they call as account executive, which is where I get to like close deals pretty much. And so that was like what was next for me, right? Is like figuring out what that was. And it was to get into business.
So are you in Silicon Valley now? Is that what you're doing full time?
That's what I do full time now. So I'm an account executive at a company called Okta. They're kind of in the identity space. And so, yeah, I get to actually like close deals now. And we're actually working with some of the fastest growing companies in the world. Like there's this company called Cerebral. They focus on mental health. They've grown from 0 to 5,000 employees in a year. And it's just wild to like work with their chief information security officers and figure out, hey, like, how can I help you, in your priorities, right? You have thousands of fires. How can I help you with those 1 or 2? And you become really good at identifying pain and basically proposing a solution to help them be successful. And it just, and in life, like, I didn't know this, but like, if you get into sales, like you can really be successful.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. Like so we didn't talk about like how I did art too. Like
Right.
I was, in Spanish market, like trying to figure out how I can get people to buy my art and stuff. Right. But I think God, like I'm a huge believer in that. Like I'm Catholic and like God will find a way to put me in the right job. And I think he did that with sales, honestly. And so I love my life. Like I love what I do. I love getting like some of the fastest growing organizations on the phone and trying to help them be successful. And yeah, it's a crazy journey, right? So
I love that. So how long you been doing that now?
whew, man, I went out there in like January 2019. So is that 2.5 years, almost 3 years?
So pre-COVID.
Uh-huh.
Has COVID changed your style of business at all, or is it?
Oh yeah. Like you used to be able to invite people out to lunch, that was a thing, and like try to wine and dine them a bit. But nowadays it's a lot of, meetings over Zoom, and it's leading through value, which I kind of like a little bit better because, people would take meetings and you buy them lunch and you build a relationship, which is good. And I still do that in my job, but now it's leading through value. And so like for me, one of the things that I do to be successful is, I do video prospecting. So like when I'm trying to get into like I sourced $1 million deal with AT&T at my past company. And I did all that through like video prospecting. So I'd reach out and be like, hey, we talked to XYZ person. They have these 3 problems, interested in chatting. And like you just become really good at like figuring out pain points and getting people to the conversation. And then when you're there, you lead through value, right?
Right.
And when you lead through value, people make you like you're seen as a trusted advisor.
Yes.
And when that happens, you build trust. And when you have trust, you can then challenge them. So like as you're getting later in like a deal cycle, you can challenge them like, hey, like, come on, like what the hell's going on here? Right. And they'll end up getting the job done for you. But it's a crazy like whole sales cycle that I've learned. It's just wild, so. But I love it.
It's being a tailor, right? That's what I've done my whole life is, I've been in sales, but I'm a network engineer, but ultimately what I do is I'm always developing a solution, and it's a performance. It's what I just started off early on the podcast is your actions will always speak larger, right? So the solution, when you're solutions based, the end result is always there, right? Harmonics has such a huge reputation in the networks we build. We've done stuff internationally. And you can see the networks that are done in Spain down to the United States. It's the exact same network, no matter where it's at.
Yeah.
Put that extra work in there. Let me ask you this: What's Marco's big? What's your next big venture? What do you want to accomplish in life?
Whew.
What's the big thing for you?
Big thing for me? It's a good question. I'm kind of at that point where I'm trying to figure out what's next for me. Currently, I love what I do. Like. For me though, it's more mentorship, right? So like Brian Colon is like my mentor. Like, I don't know what he saw. Like he saw me. I actually stood him up the first time. I don't know if you know this, but I was selling art and he was like, hey, like I want to mentor you and let's have lunch. And then I actually stood him up the first time because I was like, who is this guy?
Right.
And I don't know, something about it. Like he reached back out and was like, hey, like you should reconsider. I reconsidered. And ever since then, like it's been great. And so he's a firm believer in like in mentorship. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I take more pride in my mentors getting promoted and being successful than I do right now. And so teaching them the ways. I also have a podcast called Sales Life. It's kind of total 360 from this. This is like a whole production, but I do it via Zoom.
Right.
And we actually just sold the podcast, if you could believe that, to a company. And our whole goal is to democratize best sales practices all around the world. And so we have people that have come on from, you know, sales leaders from the United Kingdom, Brazil. We had a girl from Australia, and they just talk about how they sell in their countries and how it's, you know, different. So like, that's like my entrepreneurship, like Phil. But yeah, I actually don't know like what's next. It's just being successful. I think that's just, you know.
And with that question, that it's kind of an open-ended question, right?
Yeah.
It could really be like, I'm really capitalizing what I'm in right now. That doesn't, I think one thing with the generation that's so stupid is that for the next big fix, right? And there's no such thing. The guys who, when you look at the greatest master mechanics for Lamborghini, they've been doing that forever. In order, Bruce Lee, right? He says, you know, I don't fear the man that can do 5 kicks, 10 punches, 1,000 times. I fear the man that could do the one kick 10,000 times. And so I think what you're working on is being a craftsman, and that sales is for you. But I think that drive that pain through the triathlon, being a runner, even down to your childhood, literally set the fortitude for you and the path for today. And that's what's so freaking awesome, right? We don't know, like you said, you know, you're a strong Catholic. I came from a Catholic background. Being a Christian, one of the biggest things is faith, right? It's like something with hope. But I think one of the most powerful things is if you put the work in, God's always going to provide the road.
Yeah.
But if you don't put the work in, the road's still there. Someone else is going to run it. And that's exactly, life is that race, but life is not about a sprint. Sometimes it's about, sometimes you're sprinting, sometimes you're walking, sometimes you're running, but it's really that persistence over and over and over and over again. And it's that repetitiveness. I tell, you know, on our last podcast talking with Nikki, I don't believe in sexy shit. I just believe in keeping it regular, right? I do the same things over and over and over again, because ultimately that's what's going to get you there. I'm not looking for the next big thing. I've already done something. I know what it is, right? It's like a knockout's very simple.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to practice. And so I stick to the fundamentals of what I've done my whole life to keep it good, right? And that's what I think most people don't do.
Yeah.
They don't stick on fundamentals. And at that point, you just make big mistakes.
Right? Yeah, it's interesting. I love sales. Like, it's just, I mean, there's a stigma of like salesmen, like being sleazy car salesmen, all this stuff, right? And like, I thought that was the case when I was getting into sales. I was like, people are going to think I'm crazy. Right. But once you like understand that, no, like when you're selling like large, like $1 million deals, you know, you're becoming an advisor, right? Yes. And like you mentioned, like you're being trusted. And so one of the books that I just read, his name's John McMahon. I don't know if you know him, but he's like this SaaS master that's taken 5 companies public as chief revenue officer. And he has really good, you know, inputs on how to run a very efficient deal cycle. And he talks about doing the basics, right? Like you mentioned, doing the fundamentals. And ultimately, like that's what helps you in these larger, like 7-8 figure deals, because you're not skipping steps. The people that skip steps because they want instant gratification are the ones that you eat their lunch, right?
Yeah, they fail.
They screwed something up in the discovery process, or their champion or whatever is not high enough in the org. And you're the one that like actually vetted everything out. You became intimate with like the deal cycle, and you know kind of where things stand, and you're going to be the ultimate winner, right? And so understanding that process is something that's really interesting. And something that I love from you is doing the fundamentals, right? So
Keeping it regular.
Hey,
That's my new
keeping it
slogan.
regular, keeping
That's
it
my-
regular.
that's my keeping it regular,
Yeah.
baby. Keeping it regular.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there.
So we like to. Any questions you got, Carson? You
No,
want to throw in there?
no, I was just listening to his
Yeah.
story, man. It's pretty intriguing.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
You know, I tell people is, you know what? The gen just attracts magic, baby. Nothing but, you know,
Magic.
I've told you that, you know, men sharpen men, steel sharpen steel. It's a biblical thing. It's iron sharpen iron. That's exactly it. And I just think for myself, it's an honor for me to see young men like you look up to guys like me that come in and forge. We're some of the pioneers, and I've had pioneers ahead of me to show that we can do it, right? With that fortitude. Doesn't matter what's stacked up against you. Whatever you put, you can achieve, and it's all in your mind. And I've said this multiple times, but it's good hearing it from someone in your guys' generation that says, look, I had to beat it here first. It doesn't matter, right? You have to beat it here first. And that's so it's that whole fundamentals of what I've studied in Japan, right? Only the mind can heal the body, but only the spirit can heal the mind. So if you don't have that spiritual aspect to you, I don't give a shit how smart you are, that mind's going to give. And so that's where that real strong, why I have such a strong connection with God, because he continues to keep my mind so sharp at all times. Because I just can't depend on the physical piece of it, like this table or the success or whatever. That's just temporary, right? That's just for our eyes to see. Because I truly believe for us is we're really spiritual beings, right? And then we have to kind of roll like that. So one thing that's tradition here is, you know, I got the 10 rules, the Jen's 10 rules.
For sure.
And I know if you know who they are. So which one really stands out to you of the 10 rules?
Yeah, I mean, the one that resonated right away from the page is number 7, right? There's no substitution for hard work and dedication. Like, that's probably one of the first primary principles that I live by every day. Like, you wake up, you know, having that mindset, someone's always training harder than you, someone's always doing something better than you, right?
Ultimately, it's good to see homegrown New Mexicans put that work. We're showing the world, guess what? We're not in last place. We can be winners no matter what it is. And that's living your life by example. And that's what I think is badass. And that's the YM way. That's what Young Millionaire stands about, right? It's about, that's exactly what you're doing. And here you are in Silicon Valley, just knocking it out, man. I'm proud of you. I want you to know that the Gen's proud. And guess what, guys? Thank you guys for tuning in to the Truth Podcast. Thank you, Marcos. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And we're out, baby.